I think it's time to talk about elitism, and not elitism in general, elitism grounded within our lovely reality that is soaps. So soaps are a very polarizing piece of media, right? They're released year round, roughly 210 episodes a year, and it's a long running but still very quick paced, very fast paced story. And these actors who, typically as an actor, you do one role for about a couple months and then you wrap it up. These actors are having to do these roles for years, for lifetimes. In fact, Ken Barlow, he's been on Coronation Street since the 60s. He's been there for 65 years. That's pretty much his entire adult life. And it's one of those weird things where it's kind of met with different forms of elitism, and you have it from different groups of people. And those groups of people are, and I'll go through them one by one, just depicting why. You have elitism from fans. You have fans who are loyal to one soap because it's their soap, but any other soap is awful until their soap is bad, and then their soap is like, oh, it's abysmal, but at least it's not EastEnders. Ugh. You have casuals who don't really know what soap is and what it's about, but hate it because, there's too much drama. I can never keep up. I don't have enough drama. I already have enough drama in my life. Can't deal with soaps. And you also have elitism over actors who act in soaps, where people decide that most of them are just terrible actors, despite a lot of them being very strong, actors on the grand scheme of things. It's just their job is being a TV actor on soap. And, some of the... It was Sean's actor, I think it's Rob Krasinski or something. He was saying in an interview that some of the best actors I've ever worked with are soap actors. And it's a different medium because, as said before, you play characters for a one-off role, a one-off appearance. Maybe if you're lucky, get season 2. But fundamentally, you pick them up and then you leave them. You do a really good job. You have a very succinct story arc, and then you go from there. But no, soap actors are different. Soap actors go through years and years, different iterations of the characters, different looks of the characters, different angles, different storylines, a whole new different direction. And as both an actor and a character, it's really important and really interesting for you to reinvent yourself consistently and, keep on that level playing field. Stay as someone who's a trustworthy and can be trusted with these big storylines after all this time. It's a really interesting piece. But to start off with elitism, I think we'll start off with the casual angle. Because people who don't actually watch soaps, they don't really understand soaps. And there's this really ridiculous stigma about it. Because, it's low-form art. It's low-form... It's not quality, Because it is at odds with normal media. It's at odds with movies, at odds with TV shows. Because, fundamentally, a TV show has a start and an end. And it has a very intricately written plot that is going to play out through a set amount of episodes. And then, here we are. Take Prison Break, for example. I know it's a historic... opinion in a set. It came out mid-2000s, but point being, Prison Break is a 24 episode series, or at least somewhat. And Prison Break is about men about a brother trying to break out his other brother out of prison, and the kind of gang that he builds along the way to escape. And every action has a reaction, and every reaction has a consequence, which then you have to put out the fires, And that's why the first season of Prison Break is seen as a really intricately written show, because each action has a reaction, and therefore that was very, very well planned out to the T. And it's why people kind of think that Prison Break fell off a little bit, because, in the later seasons, Link's a bit more stupid, Michael is a bit devoid of character sometimes, and some would say it's carried by Teabag. But enough about but enough about great TV shows. People who... Soaps are a long-running thing. Also, I've got hay fevers cropping up, so if my eyes are red and my nose is running, it's hay fever. Soap is an ongoing thing. Soaps never stop. The only time soap stopped in EastEnders, for example, was 35 years on during the pandemic, where they literally couldn't leave the house. And it's a really hard thing to quantify because it is ongoing. You can't change. You have to go with the flow. You have to go with the characters. You have to have a long-term investment in these characters. And you can't have as intricately written plot lines because ultimately, instead of just stretching it over 2 hours of episodes, you have to stretch it out over a year, over 2 years, over 3 years. And that can make a storyline either feel more well-built or less complete. So why do casuals typically hate these shows? Well, it's a lot of time investment, and it's one of those things where you can just see where you just hear rumblings every now and then where it's like, I heard that Phil Mitchell is getting depressed. That's not Phil Mitchell. That's gone too far now. And when you're a casual and you don't really pay attention to the active storylines, you hear stuff tangentially and you're like, that's weird, that's ridiculous, that would never happen. But typically a lot of the casuals never really give it the option to actually prove whether it was a good decision or not. Or you have casuals who were previously a fan of the show, liked it during a set time period, and then just never went back. And it's like, oh wow, this show's fallen so far. It's not like I remember from the 1 year I watched it. And it's an impossible position because a lot of the casuals are never going to do any of the legwork to actually change their opinion. They're never gonna be like, oh no, I did actually watch it, because ultimately a soap is a long-term investment. You don't really, unless you either watch soap at Christmas and New Year, and that's about maybe the anniversary week, and that's about it if you're a casual, and that's fine. But still, you're not getting the whole experience. You're not getting all the builds. You're not getting all of the extra hype, all the extra suspense, long drawn out storyline. You're not getting all of the good stuff if you're just watching it once or twice a year. And therefore, if you watch it once and twice a year, you have your opinions of the characters you're seeing, and in turn you decide, I don't like them because they are, this is ridiculous now. I watched it at Christmas. This wasn't happening at Christmas. What is this? It's just one of those unfortunate things where, and also because it is long running, a lot of people typically only have so much shelf life. It is a long-term investment. You do watch it. You watch it in the long term. You watch 2 hours a week every week. I've watched 2 hours of EastEnders every week for the last 8 years. You know what I mean? It is a big time investment, and you can understand the stigma. And obviously the stigma goes into the actors as well, because it's a different medium, and just because stuff is told more long term doesn't mean it's bad. Yes, some of these plots aren't the most well crafted, beautifully written and paced and different. You can try meticulously write an entire storyline from start to finish, but if this storyline has 9 months of build to it, and 9 months of it in progress, and then 9 months of the outcome, ultimately sometimes you're not going to have the best material to work with. It's the simple fact of soap, right? And people just don't understand that it's a different medium. You don't look at soap the same as you look at a TV show. It's a different thing entirely. Yes, it's still a product of entertainment, but still, there's so many other factors that limit how much you can actually do. I've talked to my friends about soap, and at least a lot of them just have what, that? Nah, bloody hate that. Did you watch it though? Nah, it was just on after, for Hollyoaks. It was just on after Simpsons, or before Simpsons. Yeah, okay. EastEnders. It's just ridiculous. Everybody's a really bad actor. But no one actually goes back to make that opinion for themselves. They just kind of go off what other people say and just believe, yeah, it's all full of bad actors. Yeah, sure, there are bad actors in soaps. There are bad actors in all TV shows. There are bad actors in all movies. There are people who don't really deserve to be there but are there. just how the industry works at the end of the day. But I don't think I've done the best job of dispelling why. But it is a form of elitism at the end, because people do view it as lesser than them because it's too ridiculous, it's too silly, it's too long, too much investment. But like we said, elitism, you don't really check your elitism, you just kind of acknowledge it and move on. That's it. And it deprives a lot of people of actually getting deeply invested in soaps, because there's so many interesting and rich characters and so many different storylines that draw you in. Your favourite storyline might be completely different as to what's being shown currently. I think my Coronation Street favourite storyline is the Tyrone and Kirsty Soames abuse storyline, which is a really interesting portrayal of domestic abuse of a woman hitting a man. And it's really, really heartbreaking, really interesting, because it takes Tyrone, a character who's been there for at least a decade, mostly the idiot. He's mostly the idiot, but finally, after a rough time of it, after getting with Molly and then having a kid that wasn't his, he finally gets with someone who treats him well, but then it turns out she's got a darker side and she starts alienating him, and but they have a kid, it'll all be better now, but it just gets worse and worse and worse. And it's a storyline that kind of didn't reinvent Ty, but it definitely gave him a new shine and a new level of gravitas in a way to kind of appreciate the character much more. Because at the end of the day, there's only so much. There's only it's a cool thing about soap where you can just completely reinvent a character at the end of the day, and some people can have the best years of their lives 20 years deep. But I think people, because it's long and because it can be a bit hokey and silly and campy, some people like it a bit more serious, but sometimes seriousness just isn't what you want with soap at the end of the day. But also casuals will never really reassess their position. They'll watch it at Christmas, they'll watch it at New Year, and then they'll go back to living their lives, and that's a choice you make, and that's fair enough. The next one is from the fans. Elitism within the fans. Fans who love their soap also claim that it's atrocious, but also argue that at least it's not EastEnders. So in a form, it's tribalism, right? Where everybody typically has a favourite soap. My favourite current soap is EastEnders. But then again, I'm not really bound by this tribalism stuff, as all three of Hollyoaks, EastEnders, and Coronation Street have been my soap at different points in time. It just depends what I like at that moment. EastEnders was my favourite soap from 2018-2020. Then it kind of went into Hollyoaks for a while. And then Coronation Street, as I was watching previous years. Not necessarily 2020, because 2020 Coronation Street, and basically everything since. A lot of things since the 2020s has been pretty rough for Coronation Street. And then it was Hollyoaks. And then I'd also watched previous years of Coronation Street, like through lovely archivers. And I just went, I love Coronation Street. Love the characters. They're all great. So I've never really been in this category. But currently my favourite soap is EastEnders. Because EastEnders has had a really good couple of years. I really like Chris Crenshaw at the helm. And they have managed to refocus the show and make it more family drama based rather than crime based, or just rather than ridiculous, way too over the top, too fast paced. And it's a very weird form of elitism, because soap fans, and I'm not sure if it's a widespread thing, but somebody made a really apt point about being a soap fan is kind of like being a football fan, where, if you're a football fan, you had your peak of interest, and then you had time you were really, really invested. But now, after a couple of years, you stick around because you still love the team at the core. But maybe it's not like it was when you started watching, or maybe it's not like, let's say your club's in League One. Let's say your club's in League One in football. But a bad couple of years, and now suddenly they're in the National League, and they're in non-league football. And most of the fans don't turn up anymore. the players aren't the players you used to like. Maybe they've gone semi-pro as opposed to professional. And you're still there because you love the club and you want to see the club get better. But also, you know, you don't really like the boss. You think they're making a bunch of really stupid decisions, and you feel like it's just gutting your team. So you are crying out at like, oh, he should be sacked. They should just sack the whole team. They should just redo. And that's kind of how soap fans can be, because most people do have a traditional first like choice soap and ones that they'll watch. And a lot of people do watch soap throughout their life and just have the one that they like, and the others are scum. Happens in all sorts of media, because I'm not really sure why at this point, because it's never really a war between Coronation Street, Emmerdale, Hollyoaks, and EastEnders. For example, it's never really that deep. It's a bit of like a pissing contest in the same way, but for the most part, it's not really core to the identity. It's not like wrestling where there were two warring companies and they wanted to prove better, but ultimately, you know, the outcome's still the same. They're both trying to put out the best product they humanly can. So it is really strange to get the people who love like Coronation Street. They absolutely love it. They adore it, or at least they used to. Now they just say, oh, it's just abysmal, isn't it? It's just abysmal. But then the second someone says, yeah, and EastEnders is better, it's like, how dare you? What do you mean? It's like, what? You were just bashing Coronation Street. Like, I thought you'd like, no. Coronation Street might be in an awful place, but EastEnders is scum. Okay. And I think the final piece to this, and I could probably explore it a little bit more and go into more topics if people like this sort of video. I think the final one is elitism over soap actors, where a lot of soap actors are incredibly talented. A lot of soap actors are genuinely really, really good, and a lot of the long-term soap actors are genuinely fantastic actors. It just they get paid by acting on a soap all year round. And like I said, it's a different beast entirely. As a soap actor, or just as a normal actor, yeah, sure, you'll spend like a day crying. But like as a soap actor, you'll spend weeks crying. You'll spend weeks crying and grieving. And it slows it down entirely. You get to see, you know, if somebody dies, for example, you get to see the whole grieving process. You get to see everything. Everything's involved. And so these actors are having to depict a real life like person responding to these scenarios. And you can get so much deeper in a soap than you do a TV show, for example, because there's just so much more time, there's so much more room to let the actors act. And, you know, I personally think, and as I said before, it was, I think it is Rob Krasinski who played Rob Kaczynski. Rob Kaczynski, who played Sean. He made a statement saying, look, some of the best actors I've ever worked with are soap actors. And it's a different skill set to be a soap actor as opposed to a normal actor, because soap actors, you got like 15, 16-hour days, and not just for like 3 weeks whilst you're filming, all year round. You have to act, you have to, you know, oh, hey, here's the new scripts, guys. Here's this massive script. Remember everything. Remember it all. And there's such a fast turnout rate in terms of scripts and in terms of production that you don't really get as much time to perfect your scenes. Like we had back in a couple years ago, the one that sticks out to me, we had an actor called Timmy. I think it's called like Timmy Simons in Hollyoaks, where he played a tech nerd who got overly invested in Perry Lomax, and he, you know, most famous for playing Dear Evan Hansen in the stage play, and he kind of meant like, wow, yeah, no, Hollyoaks, it was a really good time. It kind of, it's a different place as an actor, because you gradually realize that you can't perfect everything, and sometimes you just have to do it on the fly and just do your best and fill the scene. And it, you know, it paints it in a bad idea, right? But it doesn't really lend to perfectionism. But to suggest that a lot of these people are having to do these really important scenes, but with such a fast turnout rate, it truly is fantastic, and it is a different beast entirely. And like, yes, there are soap actors who are notoriously garbage, and that's fine, because sometimes I don't really see soap actors as needing to be. Obviously, you can see it most in like the child actors, where it's like, all right, say the line, Bart, "Hello, mummy," and then but you know, like, you can tell it the most with with kid actors, but even some of the older characters, like most people take the piss out of Dev from Coronation Street, and he has proven that he can act, but for the most part, he is just doing his hokey, dumb Dev act. Like, that's the whole point. And just because they may act like an idiot doesn't mean they're a bad actor. I fundamentally believe that soap actors are in a role where they are supposed to be playing real-life people. Some real-life people are wooden as fuck. At the end of the day, some people are boring as sin. And the most, like, I take the piss about Ben Price playing Nick Tilsley, but Nick Tilsley is an absolutely boring ass character. But also, people paint that to be Ben Price being a bad actor. I just think he's naturally very wooden in the first place. But he still is given these big, important storylines at the end of the day. And like, it's a weird narrative as well. Because yes, you see all the dumb, stupid moments. They're not live actors. They're not doing anything live. But I just think it's an unfair position to put on these people who are putting in 15, 16 hours a day. Like, I think Isabel Smith from Hollyoaks is one of the best TV actors currently. It's in general. I think her turnaround, her delivery, her portrayal of Frankie Osborne in Hollyoaks has been immense. She's been the soap character of the year for me. She's been phenomenal. And when you have these characters, you run the risk of, maybe one day we do lose them. Maybe they do get a bigger role. Like JJ Osborne, for example, who played a villain in Hollyoaks. Immediately the second his stint ended, bloody hell, Coronation Street's calling, we want you here. Yeah, alright, fair enough, sick. Like, but in the same way, it is also supposed to be grounded in reality, so as much as you can't, there's only so much you can really do with a character. Like, I don't know, man. I don't know. At the end of the day, I strongly believe that soap actors are actually really talented and deserve a lot more credit, like Steve McFadden. Tremendous. I always made the joke that he only acts at Christmas, but when he's on, he's on. When he's invested in where the show's going, he is absolutely electric. And, some of these long-term characters made a lot of iconic moments. And I don't really obviously understand the elitism, because, we all have things we look at like, that's stupid, that's ridiculous. But like, fundamentally, soaps are so good because they are long-running, and you can be with these characters for years. You can know these characters. If you're an older person, like for Martin Fowler, for example, some people will have known Martin Fowler the entire time he was alive on EastEnders. Some people may have seen everything, every single thing that he's done in his life. And that's 40 years of investment. Obviously, he wasn't there the entire time, but that's 40 years of investment in a character. And, in the long term, when bad things happen to the characters we like, it hits us greatly, because it's like it's happening to a friend. And you'd never really get these long-term investment in characters, because most TV shows, they're like 8 episodes maximum. 8 episodes, there you are, get invested in this character, there's only so much to really pick apart. But a soap is different. Like, what character? Like, let's say Phil Mitchell dies. Phil Mitchell dies, and this is a nonsense hypothetical scenario. Phil Mitchell dies. We've all seen Phil for years. We've seen him from his humble beginnings to his end. There's not going to be a dry eye in the room because it's Phil Mitchell. We know his highs, we know his lows, we know everything about him. And it's like when Dot died, for example. I obviously would have preferred if they had given her the chance to actually act out her death, because I felt like it would have been very important. But still, the fanfare, the amount of people who were gutted over Dot dying, because most people know Dot as a character and they have at least interacted with Dot. And that amount of investment you can't replicate by just having a long-running TV show. You know? You can't replicate it. It's why my favourite soap death of all time is a duo. My favourite soap death is Jack and Vera. Because both two characters who, they're like your nan and granddad. They argue all the time, they get on each other's nerves, but they wouldn't want to be doing it with anybody else. You know, they wouldn't want to be there with anyone else other than themselves. And you get those rare brief moments where Vera's like, "Oh, you still love me, Jack, don't you?" And he's like, "Yes, love. Yes, love." And like she's like squeals, like, it's tremendous. But when Jack and Vera die, Vera dies first, and you just see Jack kind of mentally just break inside. He's like, oh, you know, he just makes noises because he's finally the one person he could always rely on to be there. The one person he's always loved and never wanted to be without has died. And then when Jack Duckworth dies, Vera makes an appearance. Now, yes, it's far-fetched, but like he's sat in the sofa. He's sat in his armchair, and he's dreaming. He dreams that Vera comes and sees him, and it's such a good moment, such a really fantastic moment because, you know, they share a hug, and Jack's overly affectionate. He was never overly affectionate, and she's like, "Jack, we've got to get the bus at 3:15. He's like, "Oh no, Vera, let's just have a dance." They have a little kiss, and they have a little, and it's beautiful. And then obviously you find Jack dead in the chair, and Ty just breaks because it's basically his dad. His dad's basically dead. But to be able to do that for a soap character, it's why it's my favourite soap death of all time. I'm even getting slightly choked up just thinking about it, because it's just there's so much build to that moment. There's so much life behind that moment. You've seen Jack and Vera for years. It's like losing a grandparent. You know, what are you going to do now? No one's going to replace them. They're up there in the history books. And it's just, these moments you can't fake. You can't act like there's history when there's not. And naturally with soaps there are history. And that's what makes it so much better. If you like a soap and you get into a soap, you can watch so many extra years. You can watch so much extra because there's like 200 episodes a year. And you can fully get into it. You can read the wiki and get to know all these characters and be like, "Whoa, that's so good. Oh, keep eating all the soap goodness." But with all that said, I do think there is a problem with elitism in soaps. I think that the elitism doesn't really allow people to just look at soaps as they are and actually appreciate them for what they are. They are a high effort, high production, well acted piece of media that goes on a lot longer than pretty much every other TV show on TV. Like, it's a different beast entirely. A lot of people couldn't last 3 weeks in a soap actor's shoes, but because, you know, characters go from A to B to Z, or because stuff gets a bit ridiculous and it's a bit campy sometimes, I don't like it. That's too much drama. Can't deal with all the drama. I've got enough drama in my life. people never really reassess this. And I think it does truly, it hurts people's chance of actually getting into it. Because if you just drop these preconceived notions that soaps are all bad, and you actually take a look and have a listen, you might actually enjoy yourself. And you might find yourself getting cripplingly invested to characters you wouldn't care about otherwise. It just grows on you. It grows on you with time. Each increasing year, I get more and more invested in soaps. And that's a feeling that I wouldn't swap for anything. So, what do you think about elitism in soaps? Is it everywhere? Is it nowhere? Tell me in the comment section. I've been Ash from Watching Walford. No Coronation Street or Hollyoaks video this week. I'm not feeling it. But there we are. I thought this would be a nice little supplemental to satiate the appetite. Thanks for watching. See you next time.